when he explained his account, the alien had no hair, no eyebrows, large nose, ears contorted to his skull, and a bluish tint to otherwise white skin. It was wearing a camouflage uniform next to a down craft, which indicated that if he was wearing a camouflage uniform, that he's potentially working with the government somehow. So aside from, the story that you told, there's more details in his account that seem different from what you read. So I'm not saying that it's true or not. I don't know. I reserve judgment. There's plenty of other things that I think we could chew on with what his job function was when he was working over there for those bases. So what do you think about that comparison? Did you actually hear his story as opposed to comparing what you just read?
Yeah, I spoke to him on the phone for an hour and a half, and he told me his story. But this is what you got to understand is Nellis Test and Training Range, especially back in those days, and that would have been when a number of highly top secret, highly classified programs were occurring in and around Tonopah. And one of the reasons that his team would have went out there is for phone intercepts, to monitor the phone systems within the most secure. I tell you what, that Nellis Test and Training Range now and before was one of the most securest locations that the United States owned. So it's protected by what we call a counterintelligence net or a counterintelligence network. When I was out there in the 80s, we had a counterintelligence net. Now, in the 1990s, they had the same thing. If a UFO would have crashed near Tonopah or any place on the range, but he specifically said in Quartz Mountain, there were a number of sensors, classified sensors, all over that site that would immediately detected it, number one. Number two, AFOSI is responsible for the counterintelligence operations to protect special access programs. So they would be the first to know about any of these things. But for him to say, I don't care what his story is, but him to say that this crash, the UFO would crash or UAP crashed, and he had contact with an extraterrestrial. And then later, somebody came in and showed them a UFO film and then debriefed him. And he said it wasn't OSI. That sent a flag up because it wouldn't have been anybody but OSI. There's no other entity out there that would have done that but OSI. And the two OSI agents that were stationed out there during that time period said that never happened. So that's what I'm saying.
All right. So one quick follow up, and I'll let the hands go. So would there be an instance where OSI would not be contacted? The reason I asked this is because he said prior to him going on this convoy, he was told by whoever his superiors were to ignore anything or anyone that's out there. That if you see anyone, ignore it. They ended up not doing that because apparently this guy was wearing camos. So my idea or my thought is, and I can't confirm this, is that they pulled over to help what they potentially felt like was, a soldier. And then it turned out to be this ET. So if he was briefed by his superiors to ignore this, that maybe OSI would know of this. Is that something that's possible?
Well, I guess anything possible almost. But the two OSI agents that were the only two OSI agents that were at Tonopah, we know who it is. We know who they are. And they are alive and they work for another intelligence agency. And as soon as Jason's story came out, other people, not me, but other people who knew that had been stationed out there, immediately contacted them and say, hey, what about this Jason Sands story? And when they had related to the OSI agents that had been stationed out to the story, they said, when did this happen? And then he said between 1983 and 1984, 1993 1994, they said, no, nothing like that ever happened. But they did verify the fact that those types of teams did work out of Quartz Mountain. And that's exactly where